Committee of the Whole for the City Council of Highland Park, Illinois, June 16th, 2025. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Center.
Present.
Councilmember Brockman.
Here.
Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Councilmember Tapia.
Present.
Councilmember Littleworth.
Here.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Mayor Rivera.
Here, we have quorum. We have a motion to approve the minutes of the Committee of the Whole held May 27th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
You are present.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, those are approved. We have 3 items scheduled this evening. City Manager Newkirk, if you want to start us off.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on the whole agenda this evening is a consideration to fund a proposed Oktoberfest that is proposed to be held in the Ravinia Business District this year. I do want to recognize and introduce Noah Plotkin, and he is joined by Jonathan Plotkin as well. They submitted consideration for the city for this endeavor. I've had one-on-one conversations with each elected official, and we were bringing it forward for your policy review and consideration this evening. One thing in talking to all of you, certainly hopefully as everybody knows, the city very strongly supports events and any opportunity to bring the community together for food, celebration, dining, gathering, and certainly it is reflected in the robust comprehensive program that we have set forth for this year. Anyone who is not aware, they can go to the city's website at enjoyhighlandpark.com and you can see the multitude of different events that are being planned for this year. What's unique about this consideration is we did consider an Oktoberfest last year, and it was decided for a variety of reasons that we would not move forward with it in this budget year. So I'm going to introduce Assistant Manager Aaron Jason. We've got a short PowerPoint that mirrors the staff report that's reflected in the packet this evening. And again, we're looking for your consideration of whether or not to provide funding for the Plotkins to carry out that event this year.
Thank you.
Just a clarification, I don't think it's the Plotkins.
Right,
I think it's
Ravinia, is it Ravinia Neighbors Association?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's led for them and in conjunction with the Ravinia Neighbors Association and the brewery and all the business district. Everybody wants to bring the festival to the district and host it potentially in Jensen Park like we do Food Truck Thursdays.
Right,
Dean Avenue.
got it. Thank you.
It was your request, yeah, thank you.
Ta-da! Sponsorship of Ravinia Neighborhood Association Oktoberfest event. So in late April, staff was approached by Noah Plotkin from Life Rhythms, representing Ravinia Neighborhood Association, in relation to the city co-funding an Oktoberfest event tentatively planned for September 20th of 2025. This will be in the Ravinia Business District, as Mr. Plotkin just noted. And I just want to say, because I think it's important to note this, since this is an unfunded event, that in our talkings back and forth, Mr. Plotkin has, and I'll probably call him Noah 5 times, sorry Noah for the casualness, but just for the record, that we did discuss if we did not provide funding this year, it would certainly not be something that would be of grave concern to Mr. Plotkin, that we could certainly look at this as an event for 2026 as well. And if we did, council did move forward with approving funding, this is something that staff would automatically incorporate into a 2026 budget. So, first let's talk about what we are already budgeted for. As you know, these are the main city events, the CBD events that we talked about in Committee of the Whole several times and presented previously to council. So from 2022 to 2024, we did host an Oktoberfest as part of the event lineup, and we did have to scale back based on the move from the lot to Central and Port Clinton, mostly because the costs there are definitely more expensive. We're seeing a lot of increase in expenditures related to our city event lineup. So what we do have is Taste of Highland Park this weekend, so be there or be square this weekend in Port Clinton. We have a downtown concert at Port Clinton. So Bitter Jester does their concerts in June with their finale on the 28th, and then the city hosts these downtown concerts at Port Clinton. We did a trial of these last year. They were well received. We're hoping to continue to grow them this year. So that's select Friday evenings from July through the end of September. The last night, the 26th, will be an extended Port Clinton concert, and that'll be combined with what was the former Scarecrow Fest. So that will be a larger event that last Friday evening. We'll have the Vintage Car Show on September 6th. This will be in the North St. John's lot, formerly known as the Lot. I like to say the artist formerly known as the Lot. That will it's always a big draw. We moved it to a Saturday this year to help incorporate that event when more businesses were open. So as long as take advantage of that foot traffic, we will have radio DJs there that day as well. And then Stews and Brews was decided to be the fourth main signature event in our lineup. And I know there was a lot of discussion, and I think it bears repeating, during Committee of the Whole, there was a want to still look at Oktoberfest, why we chose Stews and Brews out of the two. There are similarities between the both. They're both fall events. They both feature a number of craft beers, etc. And we've traditionally also rented large decorative tents for both events. So they're probably the most similar of the events that we have. But where they differentiate, Stews and Brews was designed to showcase local restaurants. Now, all of our events, to some way, shape, or form, highlight our local restaurants. That's a big push for us, obviously, as part of our event season. However, for this event, vendors specifically craft menu items for Stews and Brews, such as chili, goulash, pozole, stroganoff, different soups, spiked hot chocolate ciders, spiced wines, hot toddies, craft beers, etc. This is a food and beverage competition where attendees can vote, first they sample, then they vote throughout the evening. And I think the best part about it is it gives bragging rights to several of our local restaurants for the year. And they definitely do utilize that in their advertising about who was best in show. Stews and Brews is an evening event versus an all-day event, which Oktoberfest has been for us in the past. As I mentioned, Stews and Brews talks about a variety or features a variety of really unique to that restaurant offerings of food, as opposed to an Oktoberfest, which really kind of lends itself more towards that German bratwurst beer vibe, pretzels, etc. This year, instead of pairing it with a blues fest, we are pairing it with dueling pianos, as well as a popular local yacht rock group. So attendees will be able to enjoy their meals, listen to the live music, and just enjoy being cozy with the heat towers, fire pits, and the large decorative tent on Central to stay warm. So we feel Stews and Brews is really a one-of-a-kind happening. There are several large Oktoberfest celebrations throughout the Chicagoland area: Chicago, Glendale Heights, Elk Grove, Downers Grove, Berwyn, Mount Prospect, Palatine, Tinley Park, Geneva, Lake Villa, Oak Park, Long Grove, Brookfield, and Naperville, just to name a few. However, there are no free, what we consider comfort food and free events that are competition festivals that are happening in the Chicago metro area, which again sets Stews and Brews apart. And perhaps most importantly, and I said this at the start, Stews and Brews focuses on local specialty foods and beverages, whereas Oktoberfest has a real theme to it. In terms of attendance, in 2024, Oktoberfest did see 3,000 attendees over the course of 10 hours. That event was from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m., with 42.4% of those attendees being residents and 57.6% being non-residents, while Stews and Brews saw 2,500 over the course of 4 hours. It was only 5 to 9 p.m., with a 41.2% of those being residents, 58.8% being non-residents. So while technically Oktoberfest had more attendees, it's only because it ran longer. Stews and Brews also attracted more non-residents to HP. And something that we thought was important about Stews and Brews as an evening event, we hear a lot from families, they want more in HP, they want more in HP. But summer, early fall, that's when their kids are in every activity known to man. People are driving people to soccer, dance, recitals, all different things happening during the day. We were told in feedback from attendees that evening events were more desirable. So that's another reason why we looked at that. But all that aside, during Committee of the Whole, when we talked about the event season, several council members did note they wish to continue the city's Oktoberfest. Staff did explore bringing it back, and we actually looked at hosting the event in Ravinia instead of in the CBD, in the footprint of the Food Truck Thursday site, with a plan utilizing Jens Jensen and Dean Avenue. We worked alongside Ripple Productions, our event management contractor. We costed out the event and the space and determined it was still too high within the budget that we had to work with for this year. So that was a difficult event for us, but we decided not to pursue Oktoberfest as an event for the city to host in 2025. So when, I was going to say the RNA, it sounds very official, the RNA and Life Rhythms came to us and asked us to co-found Oktoberfest. Staff looked at their budget with an eye of, we know that there were council members who wanted us to explore this already, and if the direction was to fund this, where would we pull that funding from? So, as Noah kind of alluded to, the event was designed to celebrate local culture, support small businesses, and create a space where residents of all ages can come together. While smaller in scope than the city's version of Oktoberfest, they do still feel it would be a strong draw and would enhance local community and the adjacent business community by bringing people together in Highland Park. The tentative event budget as presented by Life Rhythms is $20,000, $5,000 of which they plan to seek donation towards, with the additional $15,000 in funding requested from the city. So on the screen right now is their budget breakdown. They're also seeking a waiver of all fees related to the special event permit. This is a major event, so it'd be $200. Staff initially noted concern about the budget being too low for the event. However, in talking with Noah, he felt strongly that through a combination of direct funding, in-kind contributions, and volunteer services, their estimate was in line with the actual cost of what this event expenditures would be. Staff noted that should the event move, originally proposed at Roger Williams, as Noah mentioned at the start, now they're looking at it as a Jens Jensen Dean Avenue, there's an opportunity to reduce some of these costs. They may not need to have a stage in that footprint. We know that where the band sets up right now, and I see nodding head over here, is a great space. That's a $1,500 savings. In addition, related on staff's contracts, so what we were paying for tents, which we originally had budgeted $5,000 towards tents, we're paying less than that for our events this season. So we think there's an opportunity for that part of this budget to be reduced as well. So they are seeking $15,000 in support from the city. We do have concern on providing non-emergency funding outside the budget cycle and within 120 days before an event, as well as the precedents this may set in relation to other potential requests for to request funding for non-budgeted items outside the budget cycle. With this in mind, as well as understanding that there was a desire, as we mentioned before, from several council members to continue to Oktoberfest, staff recommended that if council does wish to move forward with sponsoring Oktoberfest in Ravinia, that they do so at a maximum contribution of $10,000, which at minimum covers half of the event costs. And we think has an opportunity to cover more since they're moving the location. So what does that look like? We talked about that we do not have budget in the events budget for this event. And as you know, we keep very tight budgets here. So without having funding for this event, we had to look at, if there was interest by council, where would we potentially draw these funds from? So due to the carryovers from fiscal year 2024 to the exterior grant program, there is some cushion to reallocate funding towards Oktoberfest. So reducing the grant funding by 10% updates the program balance to $63,726 for the remainder of 2025. You'll see on the screen, to date, we've approved $53,395.21 worth of exterior grants. The original budget for this program was $100,000. After the carryovers, minus things that were from last year that we were actually carrying those over, the new fund balance is $73,726.79. So you have the balance of the requested $15,000 where we'd be at, and the staff recommended $10,000 max. Something we want to point out and why staff is really stuck with $10,000 instead of the full $15,000 is because majority of our exterior grants come in later in the year. This is the this is the building season starting right now. So people who are going to be investing in their properties are just starting to do that right now. We anticipate, just from our knowledge of what businesses are out there, either new or existing, who are looking at potentially adding a new signage, doing other updates to the exterior, that we will have significant more applications in for this exterior grant. Now, the average exterior grant is about $6,073. but the max a grant like a grant award could be is 20,000. So if we keep it at the 10,000, which leaves us just under 64,000, that gives us an opportunity to do one or two of the large full awards and still have funding for several smaller awards. That was one of the considerations. Let me keep going. And then in terms of the request for a permit waiver, staff recommends not waiving the special event permit because we think it sets precedent. The other private events in the community all pay. Chamber pays for the sidewalk sale, other groups pay for their permits. We think it would be in line to keep that $200 event permit. It also reflects the amount of staff time. I mean, this 200 barely scratches the surface for how much hours and time staff put into major special events. So it's really kind of a token placeholder space for it. It doesn't really even cover the full. So we'd like to keep that event permit application in place. And then again, talking about concerns, the proposed location, problematic, the original proposed location on Roger Williams. One of the reasons why that's problematic is it's a very narrow street. And fire is generous with us in some regards for some events that we can get down to 17 or 18 foot clearance. Really what they want is 20, and to be able to do that, you really couldn't do the type of setup that they wanted to do on Roger Williams. It's certainly a lot better for security as well to keep that in that Jens Jensen Dean footprint that we're already accustomed to. And then again, I mentioned it earlier, this request is for non-emergency funding outside of the regular budget cycle and within 120 days before the event. And it's setting precedent for requests outside of the normal budget cycle. So with all that said, thank you for listening so attentively. I have two considerations before you, Mayor and Council. One, regarding the sponsorship of the event, the amount requested of $15,000, as well as the permit fee waiver request.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right. Thank you, Plotkins, for coming.
Yes.
And by the way, Noah, thank you for the amazing job that you're doing with Food Truck Thursdays. That is clearly the place to be, not just for Highland Parkers, but the North Shore on Thursdays. I think, I said to Gita, I think we have to close Roger Williams because we're just, blowing out the place. So thank you for that. And I do love a good party. So thank you for coming to us with this suggestion. I am happy to consider this in 2026. I am 100% opposed, I'm sorry to say, for 2025. And I'm just going to share my reasons with my crew here. To start with, I don't want to be a broken record, but one-offs are something that I'm going to urge us to stop doing with our budget going forward, given how precarious the external variabilities are regarding revenues. We are passing our own local grocery tax because the state took away our grocery tax. And though that's a zero sum, that's $850,000 that we are trying to get back to our community to pay for things like police and dealing with potholes. And no disrespect to the Oktoberfest, but our priorities. I looked at the calendar, and Food Truck Thursday is happening on September 18th. And then we have live music downtown on September 19th. Do we really need to spend this much money to have another event the next day? I don't think we do. We love a good party in this town, but I gotta say, if I lived on the west side, I'd be kind of peeved right now that so much money is going into the downtown and Ravinia, and they're like, where are we? Why are we not getting some funding to do some sort of celebration over here? So I feel like we've got a lot going on. Ravinia is doing its own beer, brats, and Beethoven on July 20th. Understandably, that's not free, but that's a very similar event to this event. And I want us to have money for the exterior grants. We put that program together specifically to bring brick and mortar entities to this community. We know we have at least 2, if not more, good restaurant sites that we're still trying to bring other entities into. I think that money is better used for those grants. Up to $20,000, twice is $40,000. That's a lot of money, and I just feel like this is a fun event. I love a good brat. I love beer. I'll do the polka all day long. Let's talk about it in 26, maybe, when we're being planful with our spending and looking at our other options. I also want to see what our data is from this summer. That was one of the points we made with saying we're going to look at what's happening at Port Clinton and having events there. So I just feel like we've already talked about this. We already voted on this. And as much as I love the idea, I just feel like this is not the year to be one-offing, to be spending that kind of money. That's just my point of view. I know everybody here has a thought. Tony, did you want to?
I'll just say that I echo most of what you said. I think it's an exciting idea. You've done a great job with Food Truck Thursdays. You obviously have a very strong ability to do this kind of thing, and I'm excited about that. I am not opposed to discussing it next year. I'm uncomfortable changing the budget over this, over something that we specifically had lengthy conversations about in terms of the entire event planning for this year. It does to some degree conflict with other events, but more consistently with the way I tend to look at things economically, we've already sort of established a policy of trying to avoid one-offs. We have a potential to set certain kinds of precedents by doing things at the last minute without doing it under a more considered, thoughtful process, and that makes me a little uncomfortable. I think if we do it in 2026 or look at it in 2026, we can call this the first discussion towards that incorporation in terms of city events. So I'd be more comfortable with that.
Thanks. Marissa?
So I've looked at this and I'm in favor of doing something like this. I'm not comfortable though with the $20,000 ask. I was comfortable with what was proposed of no more than the $10,000. And given where the money would come from, that seemed more reasonable. Yeah, I'm all in favor of family-friendly events. I would definitely be attending this. I know people in the town would love something like this. But the other side of it was that, I know like if the west side of town or other places come to us in the future, we should consider that for the following year. But I think 10,000 in my mind is a reasonable ask. But I would be in favor of the 10,000.
Annette?
Okay, so I kind of look at this slightly differently. I don't look at this as a one-off. Oktoberfest has been going on, at least from what I could tell from minutes, since 2019 in Highland Park. This is our event. We have branded it beautifully. We have grown it beautifully. Last year, it was by 100 people less than the number one. It was really 1 and 2 because it was 3,300 and 3,400 for Taste of and Oktoberfest. And irrespective of the hours, the bottom line is the event was a draw. It's 3.5 times the draw that Stews and Brews was. It's not to take away from Stews and Brews. I love it. I'm not saying without it. I was very upset when we discussed it, and I actually didn't really realize that it was a done deal, that we weren't having Oktoberfest. So I'm looking at this as a gift that instead of us spending $150,000 to do an event downtown because of all the costs associated with doing it, that by doing it at Jens Jensen for the $20,000, they're doing it at 20% of the cost. They're doing it for us. We're not taking away from staff time other than promotional and media, which I know we would do. So instead of looking at it as one-off, I look at them as helping the city perpetuate what I think has become a really good event in Highland Park. So that's a couple of my things. So there's one, two, three, clearly. I don't agree with the permit waiver. I do think that would set a bad precedent. I think everybody pays their permit. That's just how it goes. It's $200. Deal with it. Sorry. So precedents, 2019, 3.3. One thing that's really important is when we look at the exterior grants, we look at it as a first come, first serve. In my estimation, if that's where we decide to take it from, this came first. And that when we set up that program, that was one of the things we looked at. We also, and one of the things we're going to talk about tonight, is vibrancy and being such an important part of what we want to do. This is one of those events that brings vibrancy. And when I think of the vibrancy that we have created downtown, which is wonderful, and that Food Truck Thursdays has done, we're kind of giving it an additional stamp. We're saying we can do an event in the Ravinia district that's very good. And instead of looking at it as the west side being upset, I would look at it as why are we spending so much money downtown, other than the fact that because of the physicality of it and a lot of the things that we have to do, we need to spend that money. So to me, this is like a gift. We get this great event that's got a 6-year history that I really don't want to see stopped. We brought in a lot of people from the outside. We did a lot for Highland Park. If they have to spend more money and go and get promoters, they're gonna look to vendors from outside. I would like to keep this as Highland Park as possible, and I do think that because it's been going on for so long, there is a familiarity, and so it is a local Highland Park, irrespective of all the wonderful towns. Erin, thank you for the research that you did, because you did good. But this is Highland Park's one, and I don't think it's too much. If it tells me anything, I love that we're doing this on Friday nights now, and that we have Food Truck Thursdays. What I wanted to see in this town was the lot on Tuesdays, Thursday food truck nights, Friday nights at Port Clinton, and the big events. And so to take away, in my mind, one that was tied for number one was a big mistake. So thank you for this gift. You run a great thing, and frankly, I want to see them succeed. And so, Marissa, the 10,000 would be a minimum, I agree with you. But rather than them failing, because, and Erin, I'm really glad you pointed out that you think this is tough to do for 20. I want to give them the 20 so that instead of wasting their time trying to raise money or raising money to do it even better, I want to make sure they succeed, because they're doing this for us, in my estimation. And frankly, I think they're picking up some of the slack that some of us thought was going to go away. Anyhow, I don't want to go on too long, but there are a couple of ways I thought of for funding it. One of it is from that, the grants. And I hate to take away from it, but again, first come, first serve. They're here right now. That's fine by me. But secondarily, last year we had some sponsorships. And so it was $435,000 that we spent because we got $49,000 in sponsorships. And that means that there's a difference of $50,000 there that was going to go toward the vibrancy and the events. So that's the money I'd like to see go toward this, and I'd like to see it go for the 20. So that's just where
I'm
I'm
a little
coming
bit
from.
confused. Wait, the
So,
whole
I
sponsor
understand.
piece doesn't make sense to me, and that does take staff time. Those don't just like,
No, I'm not saying, no,
I'm
that's
confused.
sponsorships that we got last year that we didn't spend in full.
So I would say we do spend our sponsorships. We actually budget to get like a minimum sponsorship, and then we use the rest because we're always pulling.
We used the
Diane
rest
is the
for
most
what?
frugal event planner ever. But
Yeah, I
we'll
know.
use it
To carry out.
to increase, to carry, like for unexpected increases that aren't in our budget. So we do have, I'm sorry, I don't have that with me. I just realized that's the one thing I didn't print out tonight was
It's okay,
the
I
budget
should've-
for all our events and our sponsorships. We do have some sponsorships this year, you were correct, for the Taste. We do not have as many as we've had in the past, but we are utilizing those for this event series because of the increased costs.
So I just think it's one way to look at it, and I would be happy to figure out a way or ask them to do it or whatever, but I think that this is really good. And by the way, it's not that it's insulting, but it's just that we do Food Truck Thursdays in the Ravinia area. And we've put a lot of money into the businesses, and we want to see that area really take off. And I'm thrilled with the opportunity to have a big event in that area. And God knows if we've got a space on the west side to do it next year, I'm all in on that too. But these are the different areas, just like we look at different business districts, that we're trying to develop for vibrancy. And so I don't want to see this go away.
John?
Thank you. I have some thoughts before I jump in. The idea of the funding being pulled from the exterior grant program, is that a requisite, or are there other places as well that the funding could potentially come from?
That's what we're suggesting. That account gives us the most flexibility. Everything else is definitely earmarked. So otherwise, we're looking at other line items to say, okay, well, we're not gonna do this that we have planned to do. So that's why we're suggesting that account, because we don't have pending applications, but we fully anticipate we will.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
But there is possibility for, if there's, actuals come in less than budget in other areas, to potentially
Of
draw
course, yeah.
from.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I really caution.
Understand.
against
I just wanted to understand if
dipping
that's,
a toe
I get
into
it.
amending the budget.
Totally understand.
Okay,
Yeah, I just wanted that context.
thanks.
So, city staff, amazing job, thanks for all the research. Mayor, I agree with a lot of your comments around like fiscal prudence, particularly in the environment we're in, so I appreciate all of that. I think we should think about this, though, not as strictly an expense, but a potential ROI measurement opportunity. As you pointed out, we're utilizing 2025 as an opportunity to assess the effectiveness of events in Port Clinton. We have an opportunity to also assess the effectiveness of this event in the Ravinia Business District and look at what the incremental revenues that we're going to generate from the traffic that we get to that area from that event. And we can then compare if, we're saying Oktoberfest was our second most attended event last year. Let's assume it's similarly attended this year. A good litmus test to determine how much incremental business we're getting from hosting an event over in the Ravinia Business District in addition to what we're doing in the Port Clinton area. So I don't think it's strictly an expense line item here.
Is that through the Placer
Yeah,
AI?
Placer AI can give us foot traffic counts, but yeah, we don't narrow down to say on this date we generated X amount of food and beverage.
Our businesses will know though. They're going to know how much revenue they're generating on that day, vis-a-vis a normal day.
Correct, yeah, and it's been mixed, I'll tell you. So it's just like Port Clinton Art Festival. Some businesses absolutely love it. Some businesses shut down because they lose business that day.
Sure, and I get,
Yeah.
well, that's different.
Yeah.
There were issues with setup and all that. So fair
Yeah,
enough.
it's just I wouldn't use the revenue as I would say if you support it, use this for the vibrancy aspect of what it brings. I wouldn't say we have events because they increase revenue. That's
It's a benefit.
a difficult.
It is a
part.
benefit, but it's not one that's easily measurable, and we've tried this for over a decade.
I think it's pretty easily measurable. I really do. Business,
How?
Saturday before.
Meal Colibris knows how much revenue they generate every day.
Uh-huh.
And what is this going to be on a Friday?
Fridays.
On a Saturday? On a typical Saturday. How much revenue are they generating on the Saturday of Oktoberfest?
The businesses do, but it's the disclosure that they're not required to submit for each
Right.
day. So we get their monthly receipts,
Yeah.
and we get information from the Illinois Department of Revenue that we can't share publicly.
Sure.
So even if, for example, the mayor and I have it because we're permitted users on IDOR's website, we can't share that. And
Right.
so that's why we say our suggestion is not to let individual business revenue be a driving factor of whether or not you do events.
Totally get it, and I guess I'm not suggesting that it's the driving factor. I'm just asking the group to think about that as a potential benefit. And with the RNA and NOAA's involvement, businesses can choose to provide that data or not at their discretion, but to help support why having events there could be accretive to their businesses, which drives vibrancy. That's the only thing I wanted to point out.
Okay.
I think Annette made a lot of similar points that I had in mind. Councilmember Littler, sorry.
We go by first name. It's all good.
So I don't want to take up too much time. I agree, the permit fee should stand. I think that's a bad precedent to start. But I would be supportive of also funding the full amount for the reasons mentioned.
20,000?
Yeah.
Thank you.
20 or 15? I mean,
20.
is
He
the
says,
request-
they're saying 20.
No, the request is 15 though.
15,
Yeah.
and we would raise the extra 5.
Is that the request?
But I thought Annette said 20.
I said 20 because I think that rather than, or if they raise the extra 5 and they can do a better event, great. I want to make sure this thing works. Because I think, I trust Aaron's gut on this.
That it's more expensive than the budget
know.
shows.
Although there were
It's
some
more
areas
expensive. We're
with
gonna amend the
potential
budget
costs coming
because
down,
it's-
right?
Exactly, especially if we had a stage, and it has to be ADA compliant.
Right.
But if you don't need a stage,
Yeah.
then that removes the stage rental altogether. So that would be, the ADA compliance is an extra $3,000. We don't need the stage, the whole thing goes away, we just do it in the street.
Yeah.
The tent also can be, the budget rental can be dropped down to 1,500 from, 1,500 can be dropped down to 800. From what Amber Production does, like I played her festival with my band this past Sunday, and we were under a 10 by 10 tent. It didn't rain, it was perfectly fine. We have little lights, boom, it looks like a stage, it's not a stage. And then also talent-wise, we can drop the budget down a little bit there with just, the kinds of music that I usually book, which is family-friendly. People aren't coming in from out of town, it's all local, but it's really quality.
Yeah.
And then as for staffing, also my company would take care of all the staffing, so that wouldn't be city, that would be Life Rhythms.
Yeah.
But yeah, original ask was $20,000. The dropping the 5 was to encourage the businesses to fund it a little bit and to, cooperate and to donate through this event if the city fell short a little bit. But $20,000 is definitely would be fantastic. But again, I am totally for this in 2026. I don't want to cross hairs and everything about what your already fiscal budget's all about this year. I know we can knock it out of the park in 2026. If it was available for 2025, we would do a great job as well. So.
Okay, thank you for
So
that.
what number are you landing on?
I would say I would approve the requested amount of 15.
Okay.
If that's what it takes to go through, I'll go 15.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate your rationale, Mayor's rationale, and I heard you. And I respectfully disagree. And I'd like to go through some of my rationale here. When you were going through, all the other cities that are, doing Oktoberfest, I thought, great. Oktoberfest has branding and name recognition, and I think it's wonderful that so many other cities are doing it. It only helps us. And I think that, I wrote in here, I think we find the money. People want this kind of thing, and I think it's great to bring an event like this to the Ravinia Business District for not a huge amount of money. I was going to support it simply at the $10,000 level, but I understood that the $20,000 represents a little fraction of the money being invested in the Central Business District. And as I said from the start, when we first heard about this concept, why not? And why not show the Ravinia Business District some love? Those were my words. And I do not think that $5,000, I just don't believe this. This is my belief that it's going to break the bank. I also want to say that I felt that I didn't really have a chance to add a program. So we discussed it, but it was a presentation, not a discussion around the moving of the events to Port Clinton Square. I would have liked to see more events that fit the Port Clinton, more creative ideas that were specific to that scale of space as opposed to the lot. Some creativity around that, dance, talent show, some other options, but that's another topic. I think that this is going to be a big success, and I want to ask when, and you can answer this question at the end of my questions here, when are we going to discuss adding more, or have a discussion about the incentive bucket and the exterior improvement grant bucket? And I'm going to say too that the fact that we weren't going forward back when we were discussing this, the RNA and local businesses clearly spoke up to say this will help, and I do think it will be huge fun. And by the way, I promised Nick of Bitter Jester that I would spread the word. The competition was awesome in Port Clinton Square, and the fact that there was alcohol served was very important, I thought. I'm going to get some flack for mentioning this. I wrote these words just now. But I just feel, and it weighs on me that, we spent considerably more than I thought we were going to spend on the Moraine and specifically the senior center. And that, as far as council or some members of council was concerned, was unexpected. I feel we can find the money. And I mean, we have found the money. It's coming from the exterior improvement grant bucket. But, I just don't think this is, in the context of all the money that the city spends, to me, this is not a huge amount. The Food Truck Thursday is a huge success, and frankly, the same people are involved in this. I think this is going to be, I'm certain it's going to be a big success as well. So I support it, and I was originally at the $10,000 level, but I am in favor of 15. I think I'm comfortable with that number, and especially hearing from you about being able to
Yeah,
reduce.
scaling back.
Scaling back,
And
yeah.
working with the city, not just asking for the.
And these are my, not that you would expect anything other than an honest opinion from me, but these are my honest thoughts.
Okay. Just to be clear,
Just to be clear.
Tony and I love fun too, so I don't want people to think like we're the unfun group here on the council. Andres?
Yeah, I'm gonna make the case for saying yes on the basis of three things: branding, vibrancy, and cost. On the branding side, in marketing, we know that it takes a long time to establish a brand. And part of establishing a brand is consistency. Year after year after year after year. It sets a cultural norm, it sets an expectation, people look forward to it, and they go, oh yeah, Oktoberfest, Highland Park. They've been doing it for 6-7 years, you know? And then if we just stop it and for a year, it seems that there's support for the next year, okay, good, but you work so hard at getting consistency, and then you just, oh, this year we don't have it, and then, oh, but next year we do. It is a very damaging from a branding perspective. So that would be, in my opinion, not very smart strategy. A best known practice around branding is consistency is huge. I would say that there's, and you know, the arguments have been made, it's not only a big branding, you know, Oktoberfest across the country, but we've established a branding of Highland Park Oktoberfest, and people are attracted from not only Highland Park, other places. So I think we have something very successful, and to mess with that, I think would be a mistake. On the vibrancy side, you know, we are actually going to talk about where vibrancy fits within our mission, vision, and bubbles, but we clearly feel wherever we land and where it lands, we clearly embrace it.
Vibrancy.
Vibrancy. So here we are, an opportunity to have vibrancy, and then we're about to say no. So that doesn't fit. You know, if we're saying vibrancy is a priority one way or another, but here's an opportunity to make it a priority, but we're not, I'm like, well, that's a mixed message. The thing I've been concerned since we did the Port Clinton plan, and set aside the lot, I'm not talking about lot versus Port Clinton, I'm just at the Port Clinton plan. Staff admits that the numbers will total a forecasted 5,000 fewer visitors or attendees this year, year over year to last year. And I'm still scratching my head about why we would have a plan that would have fewer visitors when the plan is to have attraction, be a destination, and all the things that implies in terms of vibrancy, as well as I would be right there with Councilman Center that while we cannot literally report the return on investment fair, I think the logic is there. If you bring 3,000, 4,000 people into the city, they have to go eat somewhere, they have to have drinks, they have to have ice cream, and so I think we can go there. And if the businesses want to volunteer,
Yeah.
no one forces them, but if they want to help make the case,
The whole district wants to volunteer.
S- no, but say volunteer disclosure.
Disclosure, right?
And again, we can't require of them, but I would argue that that would be a smart thing to do, that because they have the freedom to disclose and we can make the case. And in terms of making the case for vibrancy, this is our pilot year. Try Port Clinton, don't do much, anything at the lot. And then why not? We have an opportunity here to do something at the Riverview Business District and see how that plays out. So I think there's a vibrancy here. The other vibrancy argument for me is that they have proposed a private-public partnership, which I philosophically always lean toward, right? They came, hey, it's going to cost $20,000. They were careful about the parameters, and they say, hey, and we'll kick up 5,000 of it through the private thing, and here's a proposal for 15,000. So I think that's a good precedent, and the concern that this might set a precedent for other one-offs for other people. I think Oktoberfest is different because it's already branded and we have been doing it, right? So I don't think it's equivalent to, you know, I mean, sometimes when we say yes to them, yes, we have to say yes to everybody, but sometimes it's a false equivalency. This has legs, this has branding, this is reputation, it's very different. And then on the cost side, the waiver, that's you know, de minimis. Let's not even spend any time on that. And I think we do have a place to go for the money. There's a little bit of a risk, I don't see a big risk, a little bit of risk about what if we run out of money in November and there was an appeal for storefront, okay, but I don't think that's a big risk, and then we start the new year in January, so I'm not concerned about that. And finally, on what am I gonna say, advocate for, you know, it's not good precedent, as much as I respect Councilman Littleworth's argument, hey, let's give them the 20. I don't think it's good precedent for us to negotiate up on a request. I mean, they asked for 15, it's 20, we bring in 5 from the private, we want 15. I don't think it's a good idea just to say, well, let's give you 20. So just on that basis, I say let's go for 15. That's a request, and between 10 and 15, I don't feel there's a compelling argument. It's like they asked for 15. We think if the majority thinks it's a good idea, let's give them the 15.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for this thoughtful conversation. So nobody's interested in waiving the permit fee, as far as I can tell. So I think at this point, I have 3 people at 15, 1 at 20, 1 at 10.
I'm happy to go with 15.
You're okay with
Make
15?
it easy,
Okay.
no problem.
And I don't know where you are. Oh, okay.
Still.
Okay.
You go with that?
So,
Okay.
15. So it sounds like a majority are happy to move forward with 15 out of the External Improvement Grant Fund. And no waiver of permit fees. And thanks again for bringing the fund to the Ravinia Business District.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let's try next year, and the whole idea of a one-off, like I would like to do, this is Life Rhythms talking here, my company, which is based in the Ravinia District. I'm Roger Williams, 455 Roger Williams. You're gonna hear a lot more from me in the coming months and years of putting on more events for the greater district of Highland Park in itself. West side, north side, south side.
That'd be
east side.
great. That'd be great.
Different parts, different, areas. I've been hired for 3 nights this summer, the first 3 Fridays of September, activating Port Clinton. I booked all the music, I'm bringing my whole sound production to that.
Wonderful.
I'm really looking forward to that. It's gonna be fantastic. So thank you for the opportunity working with me every year. I'm looking forward to bringing more music to the city now.
Very cool. Tony, you had something you want to add?
Yeah, I think terming this as a one-off may be probably inappropriate on my part. What I mean by that is I'm uncomfortable fiscally in changing the budget over something we've already made a decision about.
Right.
We are having to reshift the budget. I understand that's the majority decision. I'm not going to try to argue to try to get everybody to change their mind. What I meant by one-off is I think it sets a bad precedent for people to come in on a one-time basis, even though this is an event that hopefully will continue and be strong, and I expect that it will, to come in because something occurred to them midway through the year that we already had a full, robust discussion about. This budget was set. We had a discussion about what events we were going to do this year. I am in favor of community vibrancy, and we have it. We have at least 4 events that were already projected on the screen tonight. So we have vibrancy. It's not a question of whether I'm in favor of doing things that promote community vibrancy. My decision has to do with fiscal responsibility. I love what you're doing. I think it's going to be great. I don't want you to misconstrue my comments as anything other than that.
Agreed,
Okay.
agreed, yeah. Yumi?
I wanted to say that, and I've said this before in committee of the whole, we've had discussion and different opinions, that I think it is important that you express those opinions about the budget and our process. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Even if I disagree with this particular item. And the other thing I wanted to ask, because it was part of my questions, and you don't have to give me a specific date, but we are planning to discuss the incentive
The food and
program.
beverage,
Next
everything,
meeting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that July, mid-July?
next meeting.
Okay, great,
Next
thank you.
meeting, yeah.
And just so we're all aligned, so a couple of things. So after all of our events, we do conduct debriefs. So we talk to businesses that did not participate in the event. We talk to vendors who did participate, certainly the event organizers. So we do comprehensive overview, and that really helps us be informed as we plan future events, so that'll definitely happen, certainly in this case. The other thing that, just as a reminder to the public, is to take a look at the city's website as Enjoy Highland Park, because we are one community, so we don't want people to say, hey, you're doing something in my neighborhood, why aren't you doing something in someone else's neighborhood? So we do things for the betterment of the entire community, and so that's important, just to reinforce that as a city. And then the other aspect is, as we talk about downtown events, I'll just remind the council that really mid to late season this year, as we do our assessment of the events that are held downtown, we'll be coming to a committee of the whole meeting to present very preliminary information about those events. That information will be used to inform us for the fiscal year 26 budget, street closures, number of vendors, number of people that are attending, what's the feedback from everybody. And then I know that we've heard from a number of people in terms of capital investment in Port Clinton. So that'll come after we've determined how are the events going, what more do we need to provide there. So that's just kind of in terms of next steps.
Great, thank you, yes.
One last piece.
Sure.
To your point about expenses, and I know you've heard as well from Bitter Justice and others about potentially, having bathrooms, porta potties, something available.
We have 100% had that on the list of stuff that we
Yeah.
need to follow up on.
And I remember you discussing this in a council meeting.
Right.
Where we might find room for that.
So right
As
now
Ray
for
Walker
events-
would like to tell you, Walker Brothers is not the public bathroom, but yeah, so, yeah.
Right now, for event holders, they should be self-sustained. So they should be providing security, refuse, everything that they need to provide for their event. Long-term, we certainly could look at restrooms, and that would be one of the capital, things that we'll take a look at. But right now, that is what we do ask event holders is, if you're having an event for several hours, yeah, definitely provide restrooms. Don't depend on the businesses to open up their doors.
Right.
Okay, we have two more items under the committee of the whole. So this next one is certainly an important one.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
This pertains to electric scooters and other comparable motor vehicles. We are recommending changes to the city's municipal code as it pertains to chapter 70 and 71 pertaining to motor vehicles. There is a very detailed staff report that's included in the packet. Because we only have one meeting in June, our next meeting is until July. We worked with Corporation Council, and we do have an ordinance for consideration on the city council agenda. So
For tonight.
For tonight. So any policy changes that arise as part of this committee, the whole discussion, our legal team, we're gonna be working with staff, we'll make updates to the ordinance, and then that ordinance at the 7:30 meeting could be ready to be approved as amended. That will allow us to be able to not only conduct education right away, but also enforcement, just given the increased rise of people using the e-bikes and e-scooters. So it's my pleasure to introduce Sergeant Soldano. He's going to lead us through the PowerPoint presentation, and I also want to recognize Commanders Tony Galati and Kevin Roberts as well, who were instrumental in putting together this report.
Great, thank you.
All right, I'm a newbie here, so thanks for having me. Bear with me as I get through this. But so a little bit about my position. So I'm the traffic sergeant, supervise like CSOs, but I get all like the traffic complaints, parking complaints, things that probably come across your guys' table at some point. But so that's my background and how it came to be here. So as we walk through this a little bit, the recommendation is that we amend this ordinance to include some new definitions that we don't have. And the spirit behind this is, the Illinois legislation gave us these huge gaps in electric scooters and e-bikes. For instance, the Illinois state statute allows for people 18 or over to ride electric scooters that go 10 miles an hour or less. So any of you who have kids, grandkids, family members, I would struggle to find an e-scooter on the market that goes 10 miles an hour or less. So the majority of what I'm going to call problems involve these vehicles that are traveling 15 to 30 miles per hour. And there's different variations, and we'll go into that a little bit. But the root of our problem that I'll talk about and what brings us to this is there is a growing number of complaints and incidents that surround or involve these types of, some would call them toys, but we're going to get into the definition of that, but vehicles, specifically on our public ways. And so we're clear, when I talk about public ways, I'm talking about streets, sidewalks, park district properties, all public avenues. When I first did this staff report, when we first put the staff report together, I totaled approximately 20 incidents. I can tell you since that time, it's almost a daily occurrence that we have something involving, some incident involving electric scooters or e-bikes in our bulletin. I can also tell you that the Park District is a supporter of our proposed amendment, as a lot of the problems are involving, specifically Sunset Woods Park comes to mind. It seems to be a daily occurrence where we're getting calls from either the public or the Park District staff specifically about the inappropriate use of these devices. I also want to talk about, as we get into this, the design of this, although it's an ordinance and although what we're proposing could initiate citations and tickets, the spirit of this, in my mind at least, is not a punitive thing. Like, we don't want this to be punitive. Part of our proposal is an educational component. However, we're trying to balance fun and the Go Green initiative and the ability to allow 14, 15-year-olds to have some freedoms and get to school with one of these devices, and public safety, you know. And when I would argue that when you have something that looks like a bicycle but operates just a little bit different, traveling somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 miles an hour down a sidewalk, that puts the public safety in jeopardy. So back to my point here. So motor-driven vehicles, we're looking to establish a new definition for that. We want to establish a definition for low-speed electric bicycle, low-speed electric scooters, motor-driven vehicles, and motorized wheelchairs, and then toy vehicles, and all that comes along with that. This ordinance, we would prohibit anyone under the age of 16 from operating one of these without a valid driver's license on the street. I would argue, and I have teenagers myself, I would argue that a 12 or 13-year-old doesn't know the rules of the road the same way that many of us do in the room, and therefore it becomes a challenge for them to operate a vehicle on the roadway with those of us who have, know the rules of the road. I would challenge you to find a 12-year-old who's doing a hand signal when they're going to make a left turn or right turn on a bicycle, much less an electric or a powered bicycle. We're talking about prohibit. So the second to last bullet point talks about that when I was talking about the state statute. Prohibit anyone under the age of 18 or anyone without a valid driver's license from operating a low-speed electric vehicle on public property. And we're prohibiting the operation of motor-driven vehicles and electric scooters on public sidewalks, bike paths, parks, city-owned parking lots, etc. Now we have something on the books with e-bikes on the McClory path. And some would argue maybe that they should be allowed on that. It's a bike path after all. However, again, balancing public safety, we all know that there's a lot of use of those bike paths. We have people walking, we have people pushing strollers, we have people walking dogs, a vehicle traveling 20 or more miles per hour on one of those paths, and a dog gets startled, jumps out in front. Now we have potential injuries and other, some injuries at the minimum, scrapes and bruises, but we could have worse. So the current fee for this type of violation is $10 to $500. It's incremental based on the amount of times you get tickets. We're suggesting a minimum of $100 to $500, because I do think, it's my opinion, but I think people would take that $10 ticket and just chalk it up as cost of doing business, if you will. This ordinance amendment would also give the police department some teeth to do enforcement. When right now, I can tell you, I've had a handful of parents that will come to the window or come to the police department and ask, like, I'm in the market for buying one of these e-bikes, should I do it or should I not do it? And right now, I can only suggest they follow the Illinois Vehicle Code, which, like I said, leaves huge gaps. So what I'm left doing is saying there's some parental responsibility on your part. Like, do you believe your 14-year-old is capable and responsible enough to operate a vehicle that travels these types of speeds on Green Bay Road, for example, you know? And a lot of times they look at me and say, no, maybe you're right, maybe we'll think of something different for the birthday present or whatever. So that's a huge part of this. Parents don't necessarily know what to do, how to handle these. The technology keeps increasing, but our laws and our legislation, we're falling behind. We're always kind of trying to play catch up. And this is just one of those examples. We have something that probably some would perceive as toys that are now every bit as powerful as what we would see back in the day, like mopeds. Remember mopeds? We pedal them to get going and then they go. These e-bikes now are much more sophisticated than that. We have an objective, we have an enforcement component, an educational component of this, which I referenced in the staff report. There's an e-bike course, it's ebikecourse.com, where adults can register for, like I said, this educational component, and parents can register their minor children for the course as well. Again, not being punitive. We do, generally speaking, when there's an amendment ordinance or a new ordinance that the police are involved in enforcement, we always do some level of an educational campaign. Generally speaking, that involves a warning period where we write, written warnings, verbal warnings. This is a bit of a complicated issue because a lot of our offenders are minor children. So there's an educational component for the parents as well. As I already kind of referenced this, but there is a growing number. I would say that daily is a pretty accurate, estimation of how often these are coming in. And on the police department, we're 12-hour shifts, so majority of them are coming in, especially now being summer and school's generally out. Many of them come during the day, but we also get some that are coming in the evening. I've had staff report to me. Let me think of how I want to word. I would call it gangs of e-bikes, but that's probably too strong of a word. But clumps of, small groups, swarms of e-bikes that are, and this is my word now, terrorizing our business district, clogging up intersections, staging themselves in crosswalks. And so we're clear on what this e-bike is. I'm kind of going all over the place, and I understand that, but it's kind of how this topic has come. There's all these different classes, right? Class 1. Some of you might be familiar with some of these. Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and to keep it like in perspective, and I know we got some time constraints, but these Class 1 and 2, they can travel with electric power. Up to 20 miles an hour assisted. They can go beyond that unassisted. A Class 3 is it's a pedal started, right? You need to get pedal to get going, but the motor will operate and assist you up to 28 miles per hour, and then the engine doesn't power anymore. Then you're just on pedal power, but at that point you're going 28 miles an hour. I just put some pictures of some of these. We do have other municipalities around us that have adopted or amended ordinances to kind of deal with this, I don't know, crisis is probably a strong word, but this problem. Deerfield, Lombard, Glen Ellen, Lake Forest, those are all examples of municipalities that have adopted different variations of this. Deerfield's is similar to what I stand before you and I'm proposing. Lake Forest has restrictions that are specific to their business district. Lombard has components where you have to put the amount of wattage, put it on a label on the side of your bike, because there are some variations. Anything 750 kilowatts and above is considered a high-speed electric vehicle. So to me, that gets us a little bit lost in the weeds. That's a challenge, to say the least, for police to enforce. We're not seeing these things as we're driving by and seeing labels on people's e-bikes. The way I see this playing out is, I think there's an argument that will probably be made about, why do the behavior of a few affect that of the many, and the police department would, our job is, like I said, to balance public safety and fun and all these other, you know, the environmental benefits and all that other stuff. And what that ends up being is when a change to this ordinance would allow us the teeth to do some level of enforcement. And right now, when we get these complaints, we just don't have that. We don't have that, and it puts the officers in a precarious position to, some of the public's asking for some enforcement and, hey, this is unsafe. Some saying it's not a problem. I'll tell you, when I get the complaints about the public safety and pedestrians in the roadway and things like that, the response I always get when I say, oh, there's been 3 crashes in 3 years, that's not that many. The response is, well, isn't one enough? Well, we have had one person go to the hospital involved in one of these accidents. It was a juvenile on an e-scooter who entered a crosswalk with headphones on, not paying attention, and collided with a vehicle in the roadway. So we have had that. I don't know what.
Can I interject 1 second? This is a good slide maybe to pause, and I think you've done a great job of providing background in our recommendation. This is kind of just a snapshot of, you can see the different types of vehicles and what the regulations that we are recommending. One additional note that differs, Mayor and I talked about it earlier, is the ordinance isn't quite aligned with the staff report. We are recommending that this apply for all public property, as well as not just city parking lots, but all public parking lots. And as Sergeant Saldano indicated, we have been in communication with the Park District as well, since large number of the complaints are from Park District property. So maybe if...
I'd mentioned to Corporation Council that in subsection C, where we talk about prohibited locations, that we want to capture Park District owned parks, schools, school parking lots, Park District parking lots, Park District property generally, publicly accessible parking lots. And that was a question that, you know, like the Target parking lot is a place where people seem to want to stage and do rallies. County-owned property in Highland Park. So to your point, you mentioned public property, but one question that I had was also just like the church parking lot that the city leases, or the church parking lot that the city doesn't lease. So how do we kind of capture as many spaces as possible? And when I talked to Corporation Council, they said as far as the privately owned property that is publicly accessible, we would have to work through some sort of agreement with the property owners. But all other publicly owned property could be kind of captured just through the definition of publicly owned property.
And certainly, as has been mentioned a few times, now the Park District, from my understanding, is in favor of a restriction like this, assuming the City Council is. There may be some documentation we'll need to work through with
like an IGA or something.
Our sister governments, sure we do. That's legally, that's a little simpler. There are some other restrictions on what is owned by a private entity, but we can work through all that depending on how.
Like we don't want people roaring through the preserve on these things.
So right now, I guess what we're looking for your feedback on is, do you support these restrictions for all public property? And then the minimum fine would be a minimum of $100 up to $500. That is determined based on if a citation is issued, it goes before administrative hearing, and the hearing officer makes that.
And I'll just share one more thing. Meeting with other mayors in the area, every city is dealing with this. So there's plenty of opportunity for us to kind of coalesce and hopefully at some point get the state to do something. But right now, in that absence, to your point, we need to take care of our youth and keep them safe. So, Andres, and then John.
Yeah, well, I'm fully in favor of, the direction of this. My questions are just the nuance here. I'm not quite clear about the difference between 18 years old and 16 years old in relation to motor-driven vehicle versus low-speed electric scooter. Just counterintuitively for me, right, it seems like
the definitions portion is where that distinction lies.
Yeah, but is it? What's the rationale for making a distinction on the age?
What you're confused about is the same thing that I'm saying is the huge gap that's left. So right now, Illinois says you have to be 18 years old to drive or ride an electric scooter that goes 10 miles an hour or less, which I'm arguing, I don't know such a thing. So I'm saying that the vehicles that the children are driving go much faster than that. I don't know if I'm answering your question. So what's the difference? So that's what we're saying. So what we're saying is, or what we're proposing is, that motor-driven vehicle at the 16 or over threshold would be required to drive any of these vehicles that travel at speeds higher than 10 miles an hour on the roadway.
So, no matter what, whether it's a motor-driven vehicle, I mean, motor-driven vehicle is a car or a truck, right?
Correct.
And you're suggesting that well, I'm sorry, could you go back to the suggestion, not the benchmark?
I'm sorry, if I can interrupt for a minute, Mayor.
Yeah.
The term motor-driven vehicle is used in the draft ordinance. I don't want to confuse it with a motor vehicle.
Right,
The way
there's
it's
a difference
defined.
between a motor-driven versus a car.
Something
Yeah.
with a motor.
Something with a
and-
motor.
And that's
Right.
a term we've seen in other local ordinances, which is why
Right.
it showed up here working with the police
So
department.
if you look at the actual statute as drafted that you're considering
Yeah.
at the council meeting, those definitions are all spelled out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I still don't understand the difference between prohibits anyone under the age of 16 or anyone without a valid driver's license that are operating a motor-driven vehicle, which you say is defined, and then prohibits anyone under the age of 18 with a low-speed electric scooter. I'm just trying to understand why we're making a
Well, there are
distinction.
distinctions between the scooters versus the motor-driven
Yeah,
vehicles.
why younger or older? I mean, should both be 16 or both be 18?
Is that driven by the state of Illinois statute?
Yeah.
Is that what that's within the context
Isn't it
of?
a license versus not?
My colleague, Mr. Martinez, may have it, and Sergeant Saldana on this.
So just to explain the difference between motor-driven vehicle and low-speed electric scooter, the motor-driven vehicle is the umbrella, which includes low-speed electric bicycles, low-speed electric scooters. And so the distinction from the 16-year-olds is that they are prohibited from the umbrella, from driving anything that qualifies as a motor-driven vehicle.
So they're already unable to drive those
Under state law.
All
under
that
the state motor
including-
vehicle law?
Right, the low-speed electric.
Under the state?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess, I mean, not that I'm going to debate the state right now, but I'm just trying to understand this. But isn't driving a car, I mean, isn't a 16-year-old can drive a car, but a 16-year-old can't use a motor-driven vehicle?
An electric bike would be
Yeah.
an example of a motor-driven vehicle versus a scooter,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Yeah, you're referring to the
Wow.
scooter, which is mirroring the state language. To Sergeant Saldana's original point, that is confusing, and that's not our language that we decided to put in there. We're simply expanding the umbrella on the motor-driven vehicle section, which can, because of the registration components and a number of others in the definition, will expand to the electric vehicle classes. So you won't be able to, you'll have to be 16 with a license, or with a parent to be able to use them.
If I
So,
may-
go ahead,
just-
and then, because I understand where you're going, I want you to be able to use like normal words and not motor-driven vehicle and electric scooter.
The
So-
statute does, and it recognizing the gap in definition, the statute does restrict what it defines as low-speed scooters to 18 and older. So the wisdom of that is not for me to comment on, but Springfield said scooters gotta be 18.
Right, so I'm just.
So you're saying scooter versus a bike with a motor, let's go with
Yeah.
that, right?
But, and also, I'm just, this is more a curiosity, but a 16-year-old can drive a car, but
Not a motorized.
But not a
scooter.
motorized scooter. I'm just trying to understand. Is that
So
what the
we
law is
can,
saying?
we can also clean that piece up, because we are home rule. So we can say, 16,
You can all do.
like all of them, right? You can just literally say anybody,
I would advocate for that. I mean, yeah, I would look to police officers and say, well, no, we don't want 16, 17-year-olds doing this. Okay, but just from a logic perspective and simplicity, if we say that 16-year-olds can be responsible enough to drive a car, why do we restrict them from doing one of these scooters?
let's bifurcate it for a second. Let's talk about location, and then let's talk about entity. How's that? So location, I think we're in agreement.
Yeah.
You're not in agreement.
Not for all, not for everything.
Okay, so hang on. So which one do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about entity and age, or do you want to talk about location first? Because you had your hand up first.
I mean, we can go to location, since you were making that argument
Okay.
already.
It
Yeah.
might be the easier.
Yeah,
one to-
yeah.
I think so.
And then we can
Okay.
come back to age.
Okay, so what's your?
Yeah, my concern with
objection?
location,
Uh-huh.
and maybe I'll be proven incorrect in sort of my assumption here, is that we are now, the way it's written, going to restrict pedal assist bikes, e-bikes,
E-bikes.
that people over 40 like me like to use.
Uh-huh.
Right, and that much of the biking community is getting into
Right.
because it provides an opportunity to go longer distances and go up and down hills and whatnot.
But
So I don't
Where?
think pedal assist bikes.
I don't think we're banning these things. We're just saying you can't do them on the
Drive them.
sidewalk or in a parking lot.
Or on a trail. Is that what we're saying?
Yes,
Right, so I don't agree with that piece of it.
okay.
I think
So
it's-
you are one voice.
I think it's a mistake to ban pedal assist bikes, which are very popular, again, among all ages.
On
But the
the
kids
bike
decide on bike trails.
So let's assess that right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm a walker.
Actually, Yumi had her hand
Oh,
up.
sorry.
But
yeah.
I want to, if all of you can say, I'm just going to pose the question and I want to take a straw poll. Anybody else agree that we should allow e-bikes on the trail? Okay, so
It-
that's two of you.
Can I just make one argument?
Sure.
There's a lot of parents and kids or couples where one is a strong biker and the other one isn't.
Uh-huh.
And they like going out together. And e-bikes have been really nice family thing to do because they can sort of keep pace with each other. And the growing number of bikes, right, means that where would these bikes go if they can't go on the bike? If we're saying pedal assisted bikes can't go on bike trails, that seems like a contradiction.
Okay, and so I'm going to let Yumi go and then Annette and then Marissa and then Tony.
I don't think that's what we're saying. The difference between allowing, a 16-year-old with a license to drive a car, I mean, the difference between driving a car and an e-bike is that,
We're talking
that-
location.
well, I did
Location,
want
only
Okay.
location, on the bike trail. Do you want to allow e-bikes on the bike trail?
No, I don't, but I
Okay.
was going to, I just wanted to speak
Does
to.
everybody know what
other
an
things as
e-bike is?
well.
I just want to make
Yes,
sure.
we do.
I like literally want to make sure because it is confusing.
Okay.
Like e-bikes are, like you can turn that element off and it's just a normal bike.
Yep,
Or you can push a button and it makes it just a little bit easier.
yep,
It's not, I just want to make sure everybody understands what
Yep.
that is. Okay,
got it.
okay.
So right now I'm taking a straw poll regarding location and if we're allowing e-bikes
Yeah.
on the bike trail.
Not
You're
on the
saying
bike
no?
trail.
Annette?
I'm saying no, I'm a walker. I see all these people with little kids.
Right.
If you
And
want to ride your
dogs.
e-bike with your spouse, get on the street. That's it, sorry. If you're gonna be riding, if you're gonna put a little kid on the back of a bike, God bless. But the people that are in a little stroller, I'm sorry. First of all, one of my kids has been hit by an e-bike, ended up in the hospital, and he was on a bicycle. And they're dangerous. And I don't want them, the new little path over at Park Avenue Beach?
Yep.
Beautiful thing that they did over there. Be lovely to ride your bike on it, but if it's an e-bike, they're gonna kill someone.
Right,
So
okay.
I'm an
So I'm going to
absolute no.
encourage us to not sit here and shake our heads and be like really strident. Let's just give each of
Sorry.
our colleagues the opportunity to share their opinion. The next one is Marissa.
I was gonna say the exact same thing, going on a bike trail, and I've gone on bike trails when I have little kids, like with the stroller, and it's very dangerous. And I see tons of young kids going for walks, they're on their little bikes, learning to ride. So I would say definitely not
Thanks.
e-bikes on the
Okay,
trails.
Tony?
So, what Andres said made a lot of sense. It resonated with me a lot, even though I'm generally not supportive of this. But there's a problem, which is that we have some bike trails in our community that are not shared with walkers. There's a bike trail that's to the west that parallels the railway.
The Skokie Trail.
Right, I don't see.
There are walkers over there. Again,
Okay.
west side of the city, Tony.
No, I understand that. I've been on the trail.
Uh-huh.
This is purely anecdotal, so it's not controlling, but my immediate reaction is I'm thinking of the Green Bay Trail, which is heavily used by a lot of slow traffic, dog walkers. I've seen people in manual wheelchairs on the Green Bay Trail. I would not want that shared with
E-bikes.
e-bikes, which have the potential to go very rapidly. I understand the value of e-bikes I participate in a cross-country bike ride as a sag wagon. I don't do any riding. But part of the people are very strong cyclists who pedal the entire way on regular bicycles and are accompanied by a spouse who may not be a strong cyclist, to your point. But if these are shared with pedestrians, I'm not comfortable with those being shared with e-bikes.
Okay. So, last thing on location, and then we're gonna move on to entity.
Well, I think that distinction between the types of bike trails is an important one, because I go on that trail by the Skokie Valley a lot, and they're not, I mean, the number of walkers compared to the number of bikers is very different than the Green Bay Trail, which I also go on, right? So that's one point. So I think we need to consider a distinction. Second is, I worry about enforcement. Okay, it looks like the majority is going in the way, prohibit the electric bikes that can be pedaled. But what does that mean? So if I have an electric bike and I'm pedaling, I'm not using the electric part of it, do I get pulled over?
I don't think so.
No, you're over
No,
the
well,
age of 18.
you would be
You have a
illegal to
driver's
use it.
You can't use
And
it.
I think.
No, I can't use it.
What I project happening
No, you
is.
can't use the motor.
you can't-
No, that's what I'm
No.
talking about, enforcement.
No, so you could use based on the definition of motor-driven vehicle on this, and I'm sorry if I'm confusing it further, but you, as you sit here right now, could use that on the roadway because, I'm making some assumptions here, you have a valid driver's license, so you could do that, as opposed to a 13-year-old who doesn't have that knowledge base, that rules the road knowledge, the valid driver's license, can't ride that on the roadway.
You're asking,
Yeah,
can
but
you ride it
bike-
on the bike trail?
Right.
If we ban the bike trail.
Without the bike trail.
How do we enforce it? If we decide, hey, no electric bicycle, but if I do not activate the electric part,
If he's
that's,
just pedaling his electric
We're
bike.
also concerned about people turning it off and on.
Right.
Right, and so the idea is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just have it consistent. Because if we get a report of, there's an e-bike on the trail, they call the police, if they see an officer, they turn it off right away and they're like, I wasn't using it, that's gonna be a nightmare to enforce.
Right.
And so our suggestion is if you support the policy of not doing it, just go all in and not support it. The concern comes from our perspective as staff, is having to enforce it if you say, well, if you don't see the motor on, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
May I say
Sure.
something very quickly? So we did anticipate this sort of defense, and a motor-driven vehicle is not something operated with the motor. A motor-driven vehicle is equipped with the motor.
Okay.
And so it
So
does
there's-
not matter
Right,
whether it's you're pedaling.
so you would be
that-
banned from using the
It's-
bike trails with your motor.
That's the way it reads.
With your
That's the way
e-bike.
The ordinance
Okay.
reads.
I'm fine with that. And while I sympathize with what you're saying,
Yeah.
and I think there are far fewer pedestrians than are pedestrians, and I'm just not comfortable with that.
That's right.
Okay, so let's continue
But
on.
I get what you're saying.
So now the question that we needed clarification of was entity, right? Scooter versus e-bike, I think, is pretty much the clearer definition of what are we talking about and why do we have these different age appropriation uses. So how can we clarify that piece? I mean, the bottom line is we want to keep people safe. We recognize that we're working with under the umbrella of the state law, but I think the bottom line is scooters and e-bikes, why are we treating them differently based on age?
Right.
And do we need to? Can we just have them all be addressed? 16 or 18 or whatever the age is.
So I would lean on Corporation Council a little bit, but my understanding is that 18 comes from, that's the foundation of the state statute as it sits.
Right.
So the resolution to that would be to establish an age and make it across the board.
Right.
That would be the easiest fix in my estimation.
So do you want your prohibition, bottom line is, do you want your prohibition under the age of 18 or under the age of 16? And I understand that there's an allowance under the state law for certain things to happen if you're 16 versus 18, but you could say, everybody under the age of 18, sorry, you know, the end, versus the difference.
yeah, and I would
I'm gonna
advocate.
go with him and then I got you, John.
Yeah, I would
But Elise
advocate-
before you.
No I would advocate that if you're 16 or older, you can,
Because you can drive a car.
you can drive a car. That's my argument.
I agree.
Okay. And are we permitted, Marcus, to do that if the state limits it for under 18? Can Highland Park be more lenient with that distinction between, or are we limited by the state law?
So the
Is there
state
preemption?
law governs e-scooters. It really doesn't talk a lot about
The e-bikes?
e-bikes, right?
Okay.
It just says what kind of equipment is needed on there, that's it. And so if we treat them similarly, we are stricter than the state law in terms of the e-bikes. In terms of the scooters, we are allowed by statute to create our regulations.
Okay, so, okay. Let Yumi and then John, and then I'm gonna ask for another struggle.
Okay, so what am I allowed?
Whatever you wanna say.
Whatever I want to say.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, well, I mean, as you know, I brought this issue up off topic at the last city council meeting. And, you know, since then I've seen quite a few more of incidents, largely on sidewalks, but also, you know, top speed. I estimate about 30 miles per hour on roads, and kids doing this. And a lot of them not wearing helmets, by the way.
Which is also in this statute as a requirement.
I was going to mention, I did hear, want to credit somebody in the audience, Barb Serena, for making me aware of a couple of issues. I believe, and I may be wrong, you the officer will know, that Lake Forest got so bad that they prohibited e-bikes
Altogether.
Altogether, yeah. And a question would be, you know, does, I mean, I feel comfortable we're going in a direction that I
you
feel
wanted
good
to?
about.
Okay.
But I wanted to say that, you know, parents' insurance probably, and again, I'm going to credit Barb for bringing up this issue, insurance, you're required to have car insurance to drive a car. I am not aware that you're required to have insurance to drive an e-bike. And that is a colossal problem, you know, whether you're being hit by an e-bike or losing your house because your kid was driving an e-bike and, you know, gave somebody a catastrophic injury or killed them. And yeah, so, and one last piece I wanted to add, that a basic rule of driving is that the faster you go over the speed limit, the more chance of a catastrophic injury or death. And I've seen kids driving these e-bikes at extraordinary speeds, I mean, faster than cars.
And there's also provision in the statute now that says if you do a mechanical override, there's an additional penalty for you, because people have figured out how to hack their e-bikes and make them go even faster.
Yeah.
Okay, John.
Yeah, look, I acknowledge this is an issue. There's no doubt about it, and I appreciate it, and I think we want to make sure everybody's safe. There's no question. I just think there's a lot of nuance here. I think e-bikes are very different than effectively like mini motorcycles, which we're seeing a lot of the kids run around on. And for me, the rules for those should be different, and they should not all be lumped together. And I think there could be different age limitations for each of those different classes of motor-driven vehicles as well. So I just, you know, I hate to see e-bikes in a community that is very bike-friendly get totally, basically removed from the streets.
Not the streets.
Not the
That's
streets,
what I'm
sorry.
saying, no,
From
it's in the paths.
paths.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
All right,
exciting.
anybody else
Thank you.
have anything they want to say, or no? Andres?
Well, I think if we go this way, I mean, the headline here is, and now, you know, just to make it really clear, Highland Park bans e-bikes on bike trails. Is that the headline?
Public property, but for streets.
Yeah.
And bike trails.
Yeah,
That is public
But you can
property.
put it public property because that's more all encompassing.
So
and
it's
not-
trails, it's sidewalks, it's parking lots, it's schoolyards,
Yeah, got
it's
it.
the preserve, it's Sunset Park.
Okay, so I get the legal
You
policy
can
thing,
ride your e-bike on
but-
the street, like a
Right.
That's right.
tiny
Right.
motorcycle.
but I'm thinking journalistically, the news story here is we're prohibiting, you know, yeah, public
Bikes on
property.
bike
right.
trails?
Yeah, and that is, I mean, that's a
Well, that's
statement.
why we need to
Talk to the
make
people
sure.
who are tired of dodging them, you
Yeah,
know?
no,
I mean,
I'm
it's-
so- no,
it
I'm
is
not,
what it is.
now I'm not making the case. I'm just saying,
You're just-
this is what it's gonna sound like.
Here's my recommendation. Make policy as best befits the needs of the community and don't worry about the headlines. Because at the end of the day, you're
Well-
doing what you can to keep kids safe and to keep walkers safe. And I just feel like that makes the most sense to
And we need
do,
to own the story.
well, yeah.
We need to own the,
Did you
that's what I'm
have
saying, we
your
need to own the story. I mean, because it's,
Well, and we do. Here's the great news,
Right.
because there's a whole educational component. And we're helping parents to recognize that we're doing the, look, I can tell you, when we put in the law that required kids to wear helmets on bikes, and people are like, it's the nanny state. And I was like, I'm sorry, we're trying to keep your kids safe. And I'm sorry that your kid takes the helmet off as soon as they leave the driveway. But we're gonna, as a community, our police are gonna educate children as to the damage to their brains if they fall off their bike without their helmet. It's the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So I think, did you have your hand up or no?
I didn't,
Okay.
I have a question, so I guess my hand is going up.
Okay, all right, and then let's wrap this up.
Were you in favor of 16 years for everything?
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I understand
John
John's
wants to ride his
argument.
bike on the
I
path.
think that becomes far too
Oh, I have one, by the way.
complicated. I think that becomes far too complicated.
Okay, so yeah, so it's 16 for everything.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
And then how do we add in the piece regarding private but publicly accessible parking lots? Like the parking lot by Once Upon a Bagel, like the parking lot at Target where we know people are running rallies. Like can we do something around enforcement through an agreement? How would you
Right.
guys want that to?
Well, so we operationalize it with language stating a prohibition in publicly accessible, privately owned parking lots.
Okay,
What I would do as I drafted this is add another component, where the city has an agreement to enforce, something,
Right, right.
something with that language.
which we do on private property for other
Like for towing or
violations
something, like
at
for
times,
towing or
for
something.
safety, right? For what?
Like for towing or something, if someone was parked illegally with the city. They would
Well,
have-
our
they
suggestion
try
would
to-
be, I mean, if you think of like any large parking lot, Target, or the former
Right.
Toys R Us property, they
Right.
all abut
The
public
one.
property. So working with approval with the private property owner, if they give us approval to enforce this restriction on their property, then this ordinance would give us the ability to do so.
But that's if they give us the approval. We can't enforce it on their
Correct.
private property. Like if
Right.
Target
But I
says,
guarantee you, Target will be happy as clams
no,
to
but I'm
have
just
us
saying,
come get
if
those
Target
guys out
says,
of the
hey,
parking lot.
I've got all those Tesla EV things and I
Right.
wanna have, bike fix-it things there too, and I want those people to come in and buy their helmets in the meantime for another child. I mean, it has to be also that the private property owner
They would be,
agrees to it.
yes, oh, yeah.
That's all I'm just saying.
Absolutely.
We're not running a police state here, I mean.
Right, I see you, absolutely. And by the way, Andres, I want to absolutely let you know, it won't just be Highland Park bans e-bikes on the
Right.
trail. Like, it is, every
It's gonna be
city
everywhere.
is looking at this issue right now.
I understand.
Yumi?
To that point, that if, first of all, I would be comfortable having Highland Park be a leader in this, but we know that a lot of other cities are
Have already taken action.
are taking
right.
this action, and if we didn't, we could become the mecca for,
Swarms of e-bikers.
swarms of e-bikers
Right.
coming here, and which we absolutely don't want. And I wanted to ask, would they be required, well, they're gonna have, never mind, I answered my own question, because you have to have a license, and so if you found a kid, a 12 or 13-year-old riding one of these, and you issue a citation, how's that citation getting to the
Parents?
parents?
In the mail.
Well, we can write juvenile admin, so this would be like an administrative
But I
ticket.
mean, what if they came up with a fake address, or I mean, how do you?
Anybody could do that.
We have other times where we deal with parents of juveniles for,
Okay,
We have to
breaking the law.
contact, we have to contact parents
Small
per
amount.
statute, like when we have contact with a juvenile who commits a crime or
Right. But you'd have
an
a
ordinance,
way- I
we
mean,
have to reach out, they have, yeah.
it's not like we're handing it to them
Tobacco,
on their bike and
yeah.
going, take this to your
I'm
mom.
just
Yeah, no,
asking
we're
how
not.
that works practically, I guess you
Right.
get the address
Okay.
from.
Yeah, we would make notification to parents and say, hey, we had contact with your son or daughter, and this is what happened, and we're gonna,
Okay.
Thank you.
But this would.
Tony, and then
Yeah.
Annette, and then, I think we can also.
2 seconds.
So I just have a question about enforcing this with respect to parking lots that are publicly accessible but are private.
Like a chunker park.
Like it, that's the best example of all, because it's big and it's attractive.
Right.
We don't enforce traffic regulations in private parking lots,
Not without agreements.
not without
But if you have
agreements.
an agreement, then you can.
Okay, but we do have agreements to do that with some parking lots?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I think at one point we had an agreement with like Jewel, because they had stop signs in their parking lot. People
Right,
were-
and there's
Or the
stop
no
signs and
overnight parking.
Like, we just
Right.
got approval from a property owner to enforce truck parking in their parking lot.
Oh,
And so,
Okay.
yeah, we did that, we got it in writing from them, and now we have the ability to enforce that when they call.
Okay, Annette.
One of the things that came up today was that email toward the end of the day that had to do with putting the definition, including in the definition, the electric bike. So I just wanted you to work on that during the thing, just so it's clear that the umbrella
I think that's a good
includes everything.
Right.
And that was in, yeah, I just want to make sure that we tweak that so that the ordinance is ready to go.
Yep.
For us to vote.
Okay,
And
Thank
I'm in agreement with the 16, with the location, all public spaces, I'm done. Thank you.
great. Thanks, everybody. Dinner is here. We still have to figure out if we're adding another bubble to the bottom of our budget, and we can't delay. Is there a word that you want to add? If it's vibrancy, history and culture, or do we need to have a really big conversation about this?
I think
Annette.
it's 2 minutes, and I actually was very pleased with our workshop when we had that discussion.
Uh-huh.
I don't think we should have a bubble. I would love to add it into the mission statement, and I think vibrancy should be in the mission statement. It's outcome driven, these are, I don't.
You've been
think-
talking to Andre.
I don't think it's a bubble. is
Okay,
my
so
point.
a vibrant community somewhere in the
Yes,
mission.
in the
Okay.
mission. And it's easy.
Oh, there you go. Provide high-quality
Thank you.
municipal services and an efficient fiscally responsibility through effective, transparent, collaborative, and inclusive and vibrant governance? No, that's weird.
Oh, I like that.
No, maybe it's the outcome, right? So we do this through that to,
And inclusive.
no,
Yeah.
and to, I don't know the right word, but we end with to have a vibrant community.
Leading
Toward a
to,
vibrant.
Leading
leading
to,
to a vibrant
Yeah.
community.
Oh, I like leading to.
provide high-quality municipal services and community vibrancy in an efficient and fiscally responsible
Oh,
manner.
yeah, I think that gets that.
Can you provide? Oh, yeah, you do provide
Yeah.
vibrancy.
All right. Marissa, what did you want to say?
I have no problem with
I was gonna say I like adding it as another bubble, but that just.
I do too. I think we need one more bubble, but, okay.
I see no issue with adding another bubble, and whether, I personally don't. I mean,
that. It's not a pillar.
Tony wants a bubble too. That's 4. Yes.
yeah. Well,
And not a mission
I just
statement.
wanted to reinforce a case I made at a retreat, that from an organizational design perspective, each of the 5 bubbles right now have a director responsible for that. There is, a head of police and fire, so they own public safety. There's public works director, that's infrastructure. We
There's
have economic
finance.
development, and we have sustainability. Each one has a director.
No, we don't have a director.
Or
of state.
a lead, but a director or a lead, right? A staff person in charge of that. But we don't have somebody in charge of
Diane's
vibrancy.
but we do.
We do. We absolutely do. We have Aaron and we have Diane.
Yeah,
In charge of vibrancy?
Yeah.
yeah. You
That's-
just,
Marketing
I
and
think
comms.
I think we got
That's
4
not
people for the
vibrancy.
bubble, so let's just go. with
That's
the
not
bubble.
vibrancy. That's marketing. I mean, vibrancy is everything.
Marketing and
Streets that work,
development.
police that works, infrastructure that works, economic development, all that generates vibrancy.
I'm willing to put vibrancy as a bubble. I'm not in favor of it generally in either of these places, but my preference is for the bubble.
What does it mean
It is not part of the
operationally to
mission
make a bubble?
of a
Operationally, so-
municipality at its fundamental
Core
purpose
is vibrancy.
is this mission statement.
So the bubbles came because previously our agendas were set by who was screaming in the mayor's ear. And I said, that's a really bad way to run a government. So then we said, we're gonna make it, you have to hang whatever you want off of one of these priorities. So that's how we started with the fiscal sustainability or stability, we argue about that all the time, public safety, and infrastructure investment. And then we said, but we have that special sauce that makes Highland Park unique. So that's what we added, vibrancy. But then this last 2 years in a row, we said vibrancy is an outcome, not a priority. So now we're going to split it out and have economic development and sustainability, but we're still missing culture and history and events and, you know, that special thing. So I'll be honest, you guys, let's go get dinner. Let's throw vibrancy up there. No one needs to die over adding a 6th bubble on the budget. And if
Make
you
it
don't
red.
like it, I'll see you in April of next year. We can rip it right out of there. But let's are we okay?
What are we calling it?
Vibrancy.
Just
Vibrancy returns to Highland Park's
Fine.
budget.
Not
Yeah.
community, right?
Fine.
Just
Yeah.
vibrancy.
Vibrancy or community vibrancy?
No, vibrancy. No.
Hallelujah. All right. Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Good job.
Thank you.